When I was 5, my birth parents abandoned me. When my birth mother found me again, I was a top lawyer at a prestigious firm. My girl, I finally found you. Abandonment is a crime. I can take you to court. Chapter 1. When I was 5, my mother was pregnant. Someone predicted it would be a boy. My father called me over and said in his gentlest voice, "Sonny, I'll take you to buy candy." Back then, I naively thought that if my father had a little brother, they would be happy. My father took me over a long mountain ridge. The cold wind stung my eyes. I didn't know why the road to buy candy was so far. I don't know how long we walked. My father told me, "Stay here. I'll be back soon." I waited and waited. The sun was almost setting, and I felt a fear like never before. The howls of wild dogs on the mountain ridge mingled with the whistling wind surrounding me. I ran back with all my might, but I couldn't remember the way we came. Seeing shadows flickering in the distance, I thought wild dogs must have caught up with me. I burst into tears. The shadow slowly approached. It was a woman. She looked at me with vacant eyes and took a handful of fruit from her pocket and offered it to me. I was both scared and hungry, hesitant to take it. She stuffed it into my hand and pulled me along, stumbling. Chapter 2. Back at her house, a man smoked his pipe, looking at us coldly. The woman was crazy, and I was a mess. The two of us standing together were both pitiful and comical. "Where did you pick up this child?" The woman pointed to the mountain ridge. The man sighed. "Give her something to eat. Don't let her starve to death." And so I was taken in by this couple. The villagers started gossiping. "Old Jang's got a crazy wife, and now she's picked up another girl. Their family is cursed. They're still young. Wouldn't it be better to have their own child? Old Jang's wife is so crazy. How could she give birth? Even if she did, the baby would probably be crazy too. Tisk, old Jang is a shrewd one. Feed her now, raise her up, and get a bride price later. He'll make his money back." The man told me to call them Dad and Mom. Dad said if I was lost and my real parents came looking for me, it wouldn't be too awkward if they heard me calling them Dad and Mom. After more than a month, no one came. At that moment, I clearly realized that my parents had abandoned me. They say the oldest is loved, the youngest is spoiled, and the middle child is the scapegoat. Unfortunately, I became the scapegoat. I thought that if I was obedient and didn't cause them any trouble, they would love me a little. But I was wrong. Chapter 3. Dad was unusually quiet, always busy. Sometimes days would go by without us exchanging a single word. In spring, he would plow fields for others, carrying the reins alone, plunging the plowshare into the thick earth, turning the soil into neat furrows. I watched him go back and forth like a tireless ox. During the autumn harvest, he would help others harvest grain and carry corn. 50 cents a bag, and he would carry hundreds of bags a day. He would bend his back, his face red with exertion, as he hoisted the sacks onto his shoulder. Sometimes, when the owners settled up, they would shortchange him a few cents, but Dad never argued, just silently accepted the money. I was young then and didn't understand compromise. I just thought Dad had a good temper. I also had a lot of chores. Every day I had to feed the chickens, gather firewood, husk corn, wash and cook vegetables, light the fire to warm the kong, and wash clothes. Dad's clothes were always covered in mud, and so heavy with water that I struggled to lift them. The river water was bone-chilling in winter, and my hands were covered in chilblains. Mom would wander off somewhere every day, and when she felt like it, she would come home. One day, I searched all over the hills before I found her lying in a haystack, drooling. Her face was purple from the cold, and she had fallen asleep somehow. I grabbed her hand and ran home as fast as I could. "Mom, can you please be less troublesome? I've been looking for you all afternoon. If you run off again, I'll tell Dad to lock you up." There were sweet potatoes cooking in the pot at home, and I was worried, so my voice was loud. Mom was startled. She tremblingly pulled out a few wrinkled fruits and handed them to me. "Here, my girl likes to eat these." My eyes instantly welled up. It was winter. There weren't any fruits. There were just a few dried, undeveloped ones left on the tree. From then on, I took Mom with me. While I worked, she would watch. Sometimes I would show her how to do something, and she would try to imitate me, but she would do it clumsily. I was happy. One day, I ran into my birth parents. My birth mother was sitting on a bicycle, holding a tightly wrapped baby, and my birth father was carrying her on the back. I shouted, "Dad, Mom, They turned around and looked at me with undisguised panic. Where did this brat come from? What are you yelling about? I ran up and grabbed the bicycle, still hoping to catch a glimpse of them. Did you come to take me back now that you have a little brother? My birth father pushed me to the ground. You've got the wrong people. Chapter 4. Dad came back from work and, having seen everything, already knew what had happened. Girl, let's go home. I followed Dad home, looking back every few steps. Later, I heard that my biological parents had a son. They were overjoyed, constantly doting on him as if he were precious and fragile. My older sister dropped out of elementary school and went to work at a clothing factory in town. She was smaller than a stack of clothes, and all the money she earned was sent back home to buy milk powder for her brother. I ran into them that day because my brother was sick and they had taken him to town for an injection. I suddenly remembered last winter when I had a high fever, nearly 104 degrees. My birth mother wouldn't even bother to get me a glass of water. She just pushed me out into the snow. Shivering, I could barely walk, my eyelids too heavy to open. My soft whimpers were swallowed by the wind and snow. The shock of the snow made me scream and cry out to my birth mother. Mom, I'm cold, I'm cold. Mom, please help me. She acted as if she didn't hear me, muttering to herself. Noisy, 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 so annoying. It's just a fever. Just die from it. You're just a worthless girl anyway. Stay outside for a while, and your fever will go down. I smiled bitterly. It had been obvious for a long time that I wasn't loved, but I understood it too late. Dad ate his bowl of rice quickly. He had been doing physical labor all day and was starving. Mom wasn't completely foolish. Seeing that Dad had finished eating, she immediately took his bowl and refilled it. I poured the water I had drawn from the well outside into the large water vat. This vat stored water for our daily use. I couldn't carry 2 buckets with a carrying pole, so I had to carry them one at a time, making over 10 trips each time to fill the vat. Dad called me over. Girl, come here. Do you want to stay with us? At that time, I didn't understand. I'd been living with Dad and Mom for so long. Why was he asking me this? I didn't realize until I was older that Dad was giving me a choice and showing me respect. I thought about it and decided that Dad and Mom were good people. I nodded innocently. You won't go hungry with us. Dad slurped up another mouthful of rice, satisfied. You should start school too. You're 7 years old this year. I talked to the village officials, and they said you need a name to go to school. Girl, think about it. Give yourself a name. Chapter 5. Yes, I didn't have a proper name back then. I never thought my parents would let me go to school. Even my oldest sister only finished elementary school. All the girls my age in the village were collecting pigweed and firewood. Only schooling for boys was considered useful. Dad, give me a name. Dad was silent for a long time, looking at the round moon in the sky. How about XINU? At that time, neither Dad nor I could read. The day I registered for my household registration, the staff member asked me, which XIN? I blurted out, the XIN in New Life. Just like that, I had a name, Jang. That autumn, I started first grade. Without having attended preschool, I found studying particularly difficult. I ran into my second older sister at school. At first, she was afraid I'd cling to her and didn't even dare to greet me. Later, seeing that I ignored her, she deliberately came up to me to annoy me. Mom and Dad don't want you because you're too stupid. You can't even do addition and subtraction within 10. You've become a fool like your foolish mother. She spat at me and threw bugs at me. I wasn't afraid of these things and just glared at her coldly. Your parents are so great. Your whole family is so great. Let's see if your wonderful parents will wait until you graduate to sell you off for betrothal gifts. You're just a dog for your younger brother. She was stunned. I knew my second older sister too well, knew exactly where to stab her to hurt her the most. Since we were little, my second older sister was smarter than me, and my oldest sister was more steady than me. Only I was foolish, and they looked down on me. Every day after school, I would take stones and sticks and write and draw on the ground, going over what the teacher had taught in my head. I had no one to talk to, so I pulled my mother to watch me. Mom, look, this is heaven, earth, and people. This is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. My mother giggled foolishly, pointing to the character for moon and saying, This is Yia, this is Yia. Yes, my mother couldn't recognize anything, but she recognized my name. Every day before school, I would remind my mother, don't wander off after I leave, and sweep the house clean. I've already chopped the vegetables for feeding the chickens. After you eat breakfast, Pour them into the coop. The rice is already washed. Cook it when Dad is about to come back. I'll stir-fry the dishes when I get back from school in the evening. My mother listened quietly, nodding and shaking her head from time to time. I didn't know if she understood, but she really didn't want her off again. Chapter 6. Something big happened at home. Mother was pregnant. Father, overjoyed, unprecedentedly killed a chicken and added a drumstick to both mine and Mother's bowls. I, however, felt vaguely uneasy, because I had already heard the neighbors talking. They teased me with smiles. Little girl, once your mother gives birth to a little brother, they won't want you anymore. That's not necessarily true. I heard that craziness is hereditary. What if they have a little fool? They'll still rely on you to take care of him in his old age. A girl, when she marries into another family, can she even smash the funerary bowl and wear mourning clothes? Even a foolish boy is better than a girl. Look at your father, tired every day like a skinny monkey. He can't afford to raise all of you burdens. Even some bachelors would come up to me. Little girl, come with me. I guarantee you'll eat well and live well. Scared, I ran home as fast as I could. Actually, I was more worried that the baby in Mother's belly would be as silly as her. The grievance in my heart was suffocating. Looking at the chicken drumstick in my bowl, I had no appetite. Mother ate with oil all over her mouth. Why aren't you eating? Of course I didn't dare to eat. I was both scared and angry. I ran into my room and brought out a wad of small bills. Dad, Mom, if you have a little brother, will you send me away? I can stop going to school. I can earn money too. I heard from my classmates that the wild jujubes on the back mountain were worth a lot of money. They used them for medicine in the city. On weekends, I carried a basket to pick jujubes. The jujube trees had thorns, and if I wasn't careful, I would prick my hands. After a long morning, I could only pick about half a basket. I carried it to the pharmacy in town and sold it. 20 cents a pound. I saved a few dollars. Father was stunned for a moment, as if he understood something. He spoke earnestly. Yeah, don't listen to their nonsense. Even if we have a little brother or sister, Dad and Mom won't abandon you. Eldest first, youngest last. You're the older sister. You came to our family first. It's like queuing for tickets. There's always a first come, first served order. Even later, I often use Father's words to teach my own children, respecting seniority, not male superiority. Don't ever say you won't go to school again. Only the knowledge you learn is truly your own. Mother also saw the cuts on my hands. She took my hand and blew on them. Our family laughed happily. Chapter 7. Later, I learned that Mother's illness wasn't congenital. She fell from a 3-meter-high scaffold while helping Father build a house for someone. The homeowner paid 2,000 yuan in compensation. My uncle rushed over and berated Father for a solid hour, but never mentioned a word about treating Mother. Father just kept repeating, "It's my fault. I'll get her treatment." My uncle took the 2,000 yuan and dragged Mother, whose head was still bleeding, back home with him. Father was reluctant, but thought that since he was Mother's older brother, he surely wouldn't neglect her. But their consciences were truly eaten by dogs. My uncle spent his days indulging in wine, women, and gambling. My aunt resented Mother and would beat and scold her at every opportunity. Finally, after squandering all the compensation money, Mother's illness remained untreated. 2 years later, they sent her back insane. To this day, Father still regrets that if he had been more assertive, Mother wouldn't have ended up like this. From then on, Father forbade me from picking jujubes. I forced myself to study, reading my textbooks over and over, and asking the teacher after class if I didn't understand something. I went from struggling with addition and subtraction to ranking among the top students in my class. My biological mother's son turned 1. Somehow, they heard about the city's fashionable grasping the first birthday tradition and threw a lavish banquet fit for a prince. My biological mother laid out brushes, ink, paper, an abacus, seals, and other objects. The family coaxed and guided him to grab something. He was plump, with a large head and short body. He ignored everything, fixated on a bowl of braised pork held by my second sister. My second sister always spoiled him, so she obligingly brought the bowl closer. He grabbed it, spilling it all over his legs and scalding himself. My second sister was severely beaten by her parents. See, biased parents always protect their precious sons. When I saw my second sister at school, the bruises on her face hadn't faded. She avoided me. The town is small. Secrets don't stay hidden. Everyone within 10 miles knew I was the child abandoned by my biological parents. Someone asked my biological mother, "Why did you abandon Sani? Look how sensible she is now. She's so helpful to the Jang family." She even taught her mother to read a few characters. My biological mother spat. It wasn't me who abandoned her. That child was ambitious. She ran away and didn't come back. Oh, she's just an ungrateful wretch, seeing someone else doing well and going with them. See, selfish people never feel ashamed. They naturally shift the blame for their wicked deeds onto others. Chapter 8. Time flew by in the fields. In the blink of an eye, I was about to graduate from elementary school. Mother had a baby brother, but she wasn't taking good care of him. He was always bruised and bumped or crying from hunger. He wore my old clothes, cut down and patched up, his colorful pants looking particularly comical on him. Father would lock the house when I went to school to prevent them from going out. Every day after school, I would see his small figure peering through the crack in the door. He would cling to me, calling out sweetly, "Sister, sister is back." I would hold my brother and teach him to count and recite poems, while Mother busied herself cooking in the house. Mother's spirits were much better than before, and she could manage the daily chores, but Father still wouldn't let her out, saying she couldn't handle the neighborhood gossip. After I started middle school, time became increasingly tight. My homeroom teacher, Mr. Jang, was a young man. He was here teaching in the countryside for a 5-year term. He would often say to me earnestly, "Shinue, only by studying can you get out of here. I know rural education is lacking, but I don't want to be trapped in this cage. Get out, and the world will be before your eyes." In the village, this is the world. I knew that if I didn't get into high school, no matter how much my father favored me, my fate would most likely be the same as my second older sister's. I didn't want to live that kind of life. Second sister didn't finish middle school. I heard she went south where the wages are high, working on assembly lines for 10 hours a day. Our birth mother arranged a marriage for her. The man offered a dowry of 100,000 yuan, but he was blind in one eye. She packed a few clothes and escaped in the night by jumping out the window. But second sister was only 15. I began to study desperately, compiling any problems I couldn't solve and seeking help from Mr. Zhang. During class, my desk would be filled with insects, my books defaced, and I was surrounded by mockery. She thinks she can get into high school? What a pipe dream. My parents said it's okay if I don't get in. I can go out and work and earn 1,000 yuan a month. Ha! Her dad can't even earn 1,000 a year. How ridiculous. Rats never think they're stealing, flies never think they're dirty. In the world of crows, the swan is inherently wrong. Chapter 9. My younger brother, Xiaolei, was already in elementary school, a grade younger than my birth mother's son. He finished school earlier, and every day he waited for me at the school gate, so we could walk home together. I'd often see him from afar, hunched over on the stone steps doing his homework, occasionally counting on his fingers when he couldn't figure out a problem. When I called him, he would run towards me like a cheerful little monkey. For several days, Xiaolei kept finding excuses not to wait for me. I had a bad feeling. During the last self-study class, I quietly slipped out of the school gate. I saw Xiaolei surrounded by a group of boys. They were tearing at his clothes, making him bark like a dog, and even pulling down their pants to pee on him. Finally, they ordered Xiaolei to stand against the wall as a human target, throwing darts they had bought from the small shop at him. The wall couldn't hold the darts. The darts pierced his skin again and again. My birth mother's son, Xiao Bao, clapped and cheered. Xiaolei had been frail since birth, and my mother hadn't taken good care of him. He looked much smaller than other kids his age. Small and dark, he looked helpless and desperate. They aimed the darts at his eyes. My heart leaped into my throat. I found a wrist-thick stick and charged at them furiously. The stick landed on them, and the children howled. I'm telling my mom, "You're crazy." I grabbed Xiaobao, my birth mother's son, by the collar and slapped him repeatedly. "Say that again, and I'll rip your mouth apart. And you guys, if you ever touch Xiaolei again, I'll beat you every time I see you." Aunt Lu's son tried to escape, but I stuck out my foot and tripped him. I straddled him and pinned his hand down. "Xiaolei, stab him with the dart." Xiaolei mustered all his strength and stabbed the dart into the back of his hand. My birth mother arrived amidst the chaos. Seeing her son being beaten, she furiously lunged at me, scratching and clawing. Zhang Xingyue, don't think that just because you have the surname Zhang, you've forgotten whose womb you crawled out of. Even if I break your bones, you're still my daughter. I've never seen someone so disloyal, hurting their own brother. I don't know where I found the strength, but I fought back, picking up a brick and threatening to hit her head. Say that again, he's not my brother. If you say it again, I'll kill you too. That's right, I'm just like my mother, a lunatic. If I go crazy, I could kill you all and get away with it. Perhaps it was that last sentence that scared her. My birth mother let go and scurried away with her son. The remaining children scattered. As a cold wind blew, I realized my back was soaked with sweat. Chapter 10. Xiaolei burst into tears. I led him home. Xiaolei, remember, if anyone bullies you again, fight back. Sister, your neck is bleeding. My birth mother had scratched my neck, and blood was flowing. Ignoring the wound, I continued to question Xiaolei. Do you remember? Only when you are strong will others not bully you, and only then can you protect the people you love. Xiaolei nodded firmly. Xiaolei and I tacitly agreed not to tell our parents about this incident. Dad already worked hard enough. I couldn't worry him further. Dad hadn't worked in the fields for others for a long time. In recent years, more and more people had gone out to work, and there wasn't as much farmland to cultivate as before. Dad found a job loading stones at a factory. He loaded large stones from the quarry onto a tractor and hauled them to the crusher, loading thousands of pounds every day. The happiest thing for Dad was payday, when he would give me his notebook. Yeah, helped Dad calculate the wages. Dad's handwriting was crooked, and the thin pages were soaked with sweat and then dried. Looking at the dense characters, my heart ached. After my previous outburst, the foreman stopped shortchanging Dad. Why are you shortchanging my dad? I calculated it. It should be 523 yuan. Give us the 3 yuan. Otherwise, I'll shout at your door every day and see who dares to work for you again. Dad didn't speak, but I saw his eyes glistening with tears. On the way home, Dad used the 3 yuan to buy 3 lollipops and a few sausages. Yaya knows how to stand up for Dad now. In the blink of an eye, it was the 9th grade. Mr. Zhang found a few sets of practice tests. I got these high school entrance exam practice papers from the county. You can take them and do them. We won't take up class time. Unfortunately, very few people went to him to get them. Xingyue, bring them to me after you finish them, and I'll explain the ones you get wrong. I practically spent all my after-school time in the homeroom teacher's office. My birth mother unscrupulously spread rumors about me everywhere. I know what Sani is capable of. A sparrow trying to become a phoenix. She's dreaming. I heard she's always with that homeroom teacher. They must be dating. TSK. She's just a cheapskate, destined to throw herself at men. One day, she'll end up pregnant. Chapter 11. These words reached teacher Zhang's ears. I felt very sorry. Xingyue, this is why I won't stay in the village to teach. It's okay. The truth will out. Don't think about anything else. Just focus on the exam. I felt like time was water in a sponge, squeezed out bit by bit. The high school entrance exam wasn't that important to other students, but for me, it was the first fork in the road of life, extremely important. On the day of the exam, the cicadas outside the window chirped tirelessly. I wrote furiously. The sound of my pen scratching across the test paper was particularly pleasing to my ears. Then came the long wait. I shut myself in my room, unable to do anything. The village aunts and grandmothers were all gossiping. Yaya must have failed the exam. Look, she hasn't even left the house. My birth mother was full of disdain. She said if she can pass, pigs can fly. Teacher Zhang's call came to the village store. The store owner hurried over to call me. You got in to know? One high school. Teacher, I really got in? The class teacher's voice was mixed with the crackling static of the phone line. Xingyue, you got in. Our school only had 3 students admitted. You're the top student, ranked 78th in the entire county. I didn't expect to be ranked in the county, considering the teaching quality in the county's middle schools was so much better than ours. Xingyue, come to school on Monday to pick up your acceptance letter. Xingyue, is Xingyue there? I understand, teacher. After replying to the teacher, I ran quickly to my dad's gravel quarry, my slippers flying off several times along the way. My face felt wet, and when I wiped it with my hands, I couldn't tell if it was sweat or tears. Dad was loading stones onto the tractor. I shouted at him, "Dad, I gotta know. One high school." Dad put down his shovel, as if he had expected it, and wiped his sweat. "My yeah is amazing." Dad happily handed out cigarettes to the surrounding workers. "Go home early today," my daughter got in. I sat on my father's bicycle, and the workers' words drifted into my ears. "Old Jang's girl won't want him anymore once she's successful. What's the point of girls studying? They should just get married early." "Old Lou, I think you're just thinking about your own son." Everyone burst into laughter. Chapter 12. Dad's body stiffened. He didn't turn around, just pedaled the bicycle harder. I didn't understand. They were still holding the cigarettes Dad had just handed out, yet their words were the most hurtful. A bittersweet ache filled my heart. I spoke, as if to myself. "Dad, I won't neglect you. Dad, I'll take you and Mom to the big city someday." Dad nodded vigorously. The mountain road, bathed in the setting sun, was difficult to traverse. Our shadows stretched long. I walked that road many times later, through changing seasons, as time moved on. That crumbling sunset yellow was the brightest dawn of my life. I had to go to the county for high school, but I didn't even have decent clothes, let alone money for tuition and travel. All the expenses added up to over 1,600 yuan. Father didn't speak of his worries, but a whole pack of dry tobacco had turned his hair white. My birth mother's family, upon hearing the news, had already locked their doors and returned to her parents' home, afraid we would ask to borrow money. There was no way to ask my uncle's family, with whom we had long been estranged. The neighbors could only lend 10 or 20 yuan. The light bulb at home had burned out, and it hadn't been replaced for a long time. Xiaolei was growing fast, and he needed new clothes. He couldn't keep wearing my hand-me-downs. People talk about being so poor they have to sell everything, but our house was bare. That saying sounded ridiculous in our situation. Mom sat on the doorstep, pointed to the pig we had raised for half a year, and said to Dad, "Sell the pig. We want to eat meat. Let Yaya go to school." In the end, Dad borrowed half a year's wages in advance from the factory, and together with the money from selling the half-grown pig, we barely managed to scrape together enough for my tuition. Dad handed the stack of money to me. "Yeah, focus on your studies. Don't worry about anything else." How could I not feel the weight of it? I packed my bags with all my belongings, and the only thought I could hold on to was my determination. I have to work hard. I have to work even harder to be worthy of my parents' sacrifice. On registration day, Dad took me to town, and I boarded the bus to the county seat alone. "You take care of yourself, eat well, and don't worry about home. Dad will come visit you when he has time." Dad had never spoken so much. He pulled out 2 sausages and stuffed them into my hands. "Eat these on the way. Xiaolei doesn't even have any." The bus started, and the dust swirled, engulfing Dad. I looked at the barren land and Dad's increasingly blurry figure, tears falling heavily to the ground. Chapter 13. High school was even harder than I imagined. Poverty, self-doubt, and pressure were suffocating me. Some classmates could get top grades without even paying attention in class. Some had already finished the second-year curriculum. Others were preparing for specialized enrollment exams since the first year. They were naturally gifted. Meanwhile, my understanding was still stuck at the middle school level, limited to textbook knowledge. Everyone went home on weekends. I would hide in the bathroom while the dorm supervisor did her rounds, then sneak back to my room after she left. At night, with the water and electricity cut off, I would study by flashlight, page by page. The stray cats outside yowled eerily. In the winter, the cold was bone-chilling, and I would drape my quilt over myself for warmth. 2 large steamed buns and some water were my meals for 2 days. My roommate E's mother saw me gnawing on cold buns a few times when she came to visit on weekends. After that, she would bring a large bag of milk and bread. The kind woman was considerate of my sensitive pride. "We have too much at home," she would say. "Help E eat some." Being able to eat my fill made the weekends less difficult. My final exam scores hit a new low, 195th in the grade. Our entire grade had only about 500 students. Around 100 students would be admitted to university each year. I had dropped more than 100 places compared to the entrance exam. I started to doubt myself. I was just an ordinary grain of sand. How could I aspire to be gold? I couldn't even compare to most people. How could I ever stand out? Give up, I thought. There's nothing wrong with going with the flow. Every time my father came to visit and asked about my grades, I was too ashamed to answer. It's okay. I'm keeping up. The quarry where my father worked closed down. Illegal quarrying was against the law, and the government had started to tighten regulations. My father found a job picking fruit in an orchard, which he would then push into town to sell, barely making ends meet. My father took me to a restaurant and ordered a bowl of noodles. He pulled out a few cold steamed buns. Your mother packed these for me. Mother can make steamed buns now. Let me try one. My father kept trying to hide them, but I grabbed one and took a bite. It was filled with cabbage, without a shred of meat. I took the bowl and pushed half of the noodles towards him. Dad, you eat the noodles too? I eat them all the time at school. I just wanted to taste some home cooking. Chapter 14. Dad's hair is getting whiter and whiter. He still wears the camouflage shoes I bought him in middle school. It took half a month of saving the money he earns selling fruit every day to cover my living expenses. If I continue to drift like this, I can see my whole life stretching out before me, even if I find a decent husband and receive a reasonable dowry. A wife and mother just drifting along. Is this how I repay my parents after more than 10 years of schooling? In over a year of high school, I'd never been as clear-headed as I was at that moment. I couldn't go on like this. We had to choose our subjects and classes in our second year. At that time, the country was developing rapidly, and there was a shortage of research talent. The school had already started prioritizing science over humanities. I hesitated for a long time. Most of the points I lost were in science subjects. If I dropped science, my grades would improve, but everyone said that science subjects led to better jobs and higher salaries. Our homeroom teacher at the time was a chemistry teacher, and he practically wanted all of us to choose science. Those who choose humanities are idiots. They won't have a future. The scales in my heart tipped back and forth. My middle school homeroom teacher, Mr. Jang, heard about me and sent someone with some books and stationery. I saw him from a distance through the iron bars. Xinyue, I've transferred to the county experimental middle school. I've been there for a month. That's great. Congratulations, Mr. Zhang. Mr. Zhang looked energetic and completely different from when he was in the village. As they say, good news brings high spirits. I told him about my inner struggle. Xinyue, first, you must choose a field you're comfortable with. Don't think about future employment or how much money you'll make. You're still struggling in the water. You need to get ashore first to save yourself. Mr. Zhang's words were like a bucket of cold water over my head. Yes, my goal is to get into university first. It would be putting the cart before the horse to only consider the general environment and ignore my own strengths and weaknesses. Then he added, but if you're choosing humanities to make things easier for yourself, I advise you to forget it. There's no shame in studying humanities, and it's definitely not as easy as people say. There's nothing easy about studying. Once the taut string breaks, you'll lose your drive. Chapter 15. Making the decision felt like a weight lifted. I started dropping some science subjects, devoting most of my time to memorization and practice tests. In the boiling water room, at 5 a.m., I'd fill a large mug with hot water, warming my hands while reciting. By 6:30 a.m., when others arrived at the classroom, I'd already finished a practice test. The flashlight under my cover stayed on until late into the night. My pockets were always filled with vocabulary flashcards. At the end of year exam for 11th grade, I finally reached 85th in the year, an improvement of nearly 100 places. When I went home for summer vacation, Dad asked about my grades. I could finally answer him with pride. My biological father, upon hearing the news, acted nonchalant. Just what I'd expect from an old Lou. Good genes. She can't deny it. If Sanner can get into university, then our Xiaobao will definitely get into Tsinghua or Peking University. Someone teased him. Sanner doesn't even acknowledge you. You've never taken care of her for a single day. How could she not acknowledge me? There's no such thing as a child not acknowledging their father. I scoffed inwardly. I acknowledge your grandma's leg. Before summer break, I got a huge pile of study materials from a graduating senior. Dad loaded them all onto his tricycle, and I pushed it from behind all the way home. Dad, is it heavy? Not heavy, much lighter than a cart of apples. Dad answered easily. He was used to this kind of weight. A daily cart of apples was several times heavier. The hardships of life were far greater than the hardships of studying. During the summer vacation, kids my age were all doing farm work, plowing fields, cutting grass, harvesting wheat. Dad never made me work. He now took Mom and my younger brother with him. Mom was getting stronger and could work in the fields now. People on the road laughed at them. Old Jang's daughter sure is living the good life. Doesn't have to do any work. While his son has worked like a donkey. Xiaolei retorted, my sister has important things to do. Besides, I'm stronger than her. I felt ashamed and could only study day and night. There was no fan at home, and the dog days of summer were so hot there wasn't a single breeze. Soon, I would be covered in sweat. I'd draw a bucket of water from the well and pour it over my head, then continue studying. Chapter 16. In the blink of an eye, it was the second semester of our senior year. My ranking hovered around 50th in the grade. No matter how hard I tried, it was difficult to improve. Only 123 days remained until the college entrance exam. The final battle was approaching, and everyone was using their own special skills. Some started hiring private tutors for one-on-one lessons. Some had already been recommended for admission. Some were looking into vocational colleges. Every afternoon, students were absent from class to practice their special talents. Looking at the empty seats, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Also chose liberal arts and was in the same class as me. She had decided to pursue dance as her special talent. In addition to her weekly dance classes, her mother also hired a tutor for her. It was said to cost 100 yuan per hour. Do you know how annoying that tutor is? He speaks so slowly. Even a dog would fall asleep listening to him. Only my gullible mother believes him, saying something about him having taught graduating classes for 15 years. She saw the envious look in my eyes. Yeah, that's not what I meant. It's okay, you've got this. It really was okay. I envied but I never felt jealous of her. I hoped she would always be her mother's little princess. When came back, she tossed me a voice recorder. Here, I recorded everything the old man said. You can listen to it repeatedly. At a time when everyone was afraid you might learn even a little bit more than them, people as generous as were rare. I was so excited, I didn't know what to do. Words of gratitude felt insufficient. Okay, don't get all sentimental. I can't stand that. This thing is expensive. You'll owe me a meal. I listened to the recordings over and over again. The teacher was actually very good, explaining many difficult and obscure knowledge points clearly. I organized the things I didn't understand, and took them to her tutor on weekends for further explanation. Relying on this recorder, I listened repeatedly to the difficult concepts. Little by little, I understood, pondered, digested, and absorbed them. Like wheat seedlings in a field, I grew vigorously after every rain. Chapter 17. The college entrance exam arrived as scheduled. After the exam, everyone went wild. I let out a long breath, goodbye to my high school life. My name was still on the honor roll in the corridor. The climbing rock at the school gate still stood tall, having seen off countless students. Swallows had built a nest at the entrance of the classroom, sometime without me noticing. I had never paid attention to these things, always rushing forward. The day the results came out coincided with our village's temple fair. Every family set up tables in their courtyards and offered sacrifices to the gods. Dad took me to the village chief's house to check my scores. The system was busy. The web page kept loading but wouldn't open. The men drinking and playing cards outside quieted down. My heart was in my throat. Chinese 128, Math 120, English 125, Liberal Arts 222. Total score 595. That year, the first-tier undergraduate admission score for liberal arts was 536. Dad patted my shoulder hard with trembling hands. The village chief, unusually, invited Dad to stay for dinner. Dad, not good at socializing, was uncomfortable in such situations. But when he walked out the door, his back was much straighter. I applied to a 985 university in our province. Following the advice of teacher Jang and Yi's mother, I chose law. In this impoverished backwater full of wolves, tigers, and leopards, people don't understand the law, reject the law, but also fear it. After my birth mother heard the news, she and my birth father brought a chicken to our house. I knew Yaya would definitely get in. When you become successful, don't forget to help your little brother. Yaya's birthday is coming soon. We killed a chicken to nourish you. I didn't know how she could say these things so shamelessly. You must be mistaken. My birthday is not May 6th. I gave birth to you. How could I remember wrong? You're wrong. My birthday is October 9th. My birth mother still had a hint of a sneer. Of course she remembered. On October 9th, I almost froze to death on the mountain. Chapter 18. Mother, I don't know why, picked up a stone and threw it at my birth mother. She couldn't dodge in time and got hit on the forehead. My birth father started cursing. You crazy woman, I'll kill you. Mother, as if stimulated, her eyes bloodshot, like a hen protecting her chicks, wildly swung a shovel. Xiaolei came back at this time and stood in front of Mother. Get out of here with your things. If you come to my house again, I'll break your legs. He grabbed my birth father and punched him repeatedly in the stomach. The skinny little monkey I protected back then had now grown into a man. My birth parents fled in panic, not forgetting to spout vicious words as they left. Zhang Xinyue, you ungrateful wretch, you'll get your comeuppance. I combed Mother's hair and comforted her like a child. Don't worry, Mother. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, is your daughter. Later, I'll take you to see a doctor, ride a train, and see tall buildings. Mother gradually calmed down and then smiled. At the dinner table, Xiaolei suggested dropping out of school. He was about to graduate from junior high, and his grades weren't very good. Both Mom and Dad felt that since he wasn't academically inclined, it was a waste of money. Currently, my university tuition was also tight, and he wanted to contribute. I firmly refused. There are student loans now. I'll ask teacher Jang about the application process. Besides, I can work part-time in college. Don't worry about my living expenses. Xiaolei is only in his second year of junior high. He should finish junior high first. If that doesn't work, he can learn a trade. Chapter 19. The day the acceptance letter arrived, I was helping my father thresh wheat. Dust and chaff flew everywhere as I worked, my head wrapped in a scarf. The postman yelled my name 3 times, Zhang Xinyue. I took the letter. He looked at me with disbelief, then gave me a thumbs up. He took out his camera and snapped a picture. Well done, girl. That photo later ended up in the local newspaper. It turned out he was the postmaster. The university president contacted me afterwards, saying the school could help me apply for a student loan. They also offered a living allowance to ensure I could attend. This was undoubtedly the best news. When I left home, my mother had saved cotton from half an acre of land and made me a thick new quilt. The long and short stitches resembled a centipede. It was my most valuable possession. I embarked on my journey to university. With each step, my hometown felt further away. My family saw me off again and again. My father, a man of few words, and my mother, struggling to express herself, lifted me up with their silent love. I carried their love with me towards the vast horizon. Time, please slow down. Let me grow up first, then let my parents grow old slowly. I want to be their wings, their eyes, their support. University life was very busy. On campus, I rushed between classes. Off campus, I juggled multiple part-time jobs. Finally, I could eat my fill, stand tall, and stop asking my family for money. The city offered many opportunities. A few hours at a fast food restaurant, a supermarket, or a grand opening celebration could always fill my stomach. There were boys who showed interest. I refused them. I was too busy. I didn't have time for dating. I was also too poor. I had nothing to offer but my youth. I didn't want that. Gradually, everyone knew that I preferred earning money to romance. Chapter 20. Yi got into her dream school in Beijing. Sometimes we'd talk on the phone. I'd let it ring 3 times, and she'd hang up and call me back. You're so poor. Let me save you some phone credit. Yeah, if it weren't for your influence in high school, I really don't know if I could have gotten in here. She always spoke in a way that was pleasant and considerate. Truly affluent people shine brightly without being blinding, confident yet restrained, illuminating their own path without extinguishing the lights of others. I still owe you a meal. Great. Treat me to something nice when you start earning money. Xiaolei went to vocational school after junior high and chose auto repair. The 3 most popular professions for poor families: auto repair, hairdressing, and cooking. Xiaolei wasn't academically gifted, but he was quick-witted and nimble, and learning a trade would serve him well in the future. 4-wheeled cars weren't common back then, and people scoffed at the idea. There are barely any drivers. He'll starve to death learning car repair. The Zhang family must have money to burn. They've already put 1 kid through college and don't know their place. If he doesn't have the potential, don't waste the money. He's a grown man. Shouldn't he be thinking about earning money and getting married instead of relying on his parents? Xiaolei was so upset he called me to vent. Sis, maybe I should quit. No, you can't quit. Listen to me. If you can't afford the tuition, I'll help you. The orchard owner where Dad harvested fruit bought another plot of land and entrusted the old orchard to Dad's care. Dad no longer had to run around selling fruit all day. I used the money I saved from my part-time job to install a landline at home. Mobile phones were already common, but Dad found them inconvenient to carry around, and there was only reception on the hilltop, which wasn't very practical. Chapter 21. My graduation from university was approaching, and I was torn between taking the civil service exam and applying for postgraduate studies. Zhang Shua, a senior a year above me, who later became my boyfriend, rationally analyzed the situation for me. If you want to change your fate and have an iron rice bowl, take the civil service exam. The competition for law is relatively smaller. If you want to earn more money, go to graduate school. Getting into a higher-ranked law firm will be a great advantage. After much deliberation, I started preparing for the postgraduate entrance exam. I appreciated his advice, but felt I had nothing to offer in return. I found a clerical job at a law firm, started observing cases, and began preparing for the bar exam. Xiaolei, after graduation, was assigned to an auto repair shop. He spent his days lying under cars covered in grime like a coal miner. But he was hardworking and refused to take on private jobs. Both clients and his superiors praised him constantly. After graduating with my master's degree, I received an offer from a prestigious law firm. One morning, the office door opened, and I saw my birth mother's familiar face. She had aged considerably. I don't know how she managed to find me, but she stood there in my bright office, looking lost. Yeah, please help your younger brother. He's addicted to online games. I really don't know what to do. Don't blame me for being cruel. I had no choice back then. Sister Lee in the office couldn't stand it anymore. Lady, you abandoned Yiya. Now you have the nerve to show up? Aren't you ashamed of yourself at your age? Do you know this is called abandonment? Yiya is being kind by not suing you. The cases she handles now start with four-figure fees. My birth mother's face flushed red and then white. I really wanted to give Sister Lee a thumbs up. She dismissed her with just 3 sentences. Of course, I wouldn't sue them. Dealing with people like them is just like Sister Lee said. Let them live with guilt. Let them live with regret. Let them live in fear. Let them never dare to bother their parents again. This is far more agonizing than a lawsuit. Chapter 22. During the spring festival, Xiaolei surprisingly drove back in a used car. Everyone was incredibly envious. Besides the delivery trucks that came from outside, no one had ever seen a 4-wheeled car drive into the village. Xiaolei is so successful. Can you take me for a spin? Will I get carsick? Does it feel like a train? Xiaolei took his parents to the town market for New Year's shopping. We bought carp, pork, candy, roast chicken, and pork knuckle. We bought new clothes for both Mom and Dad. We also bought couplets and 2 big red lanterns. Dad kept the window open, wanted to chat with everyone who passed by. Sitting in the back seat, I had never seen my parents so proud. Xiaolei, did you get this car legally? Sis, your occupational hazard is acting up again. You think I stole it? It belonged to one of my clients. They got a new car and left the old one at the repair shop, so I bought it. New Year's Eve dinner was especially lively. While setting off fireworks on New Year's Eve, Zhang Shua called. You Happy New Year? Happy New Year to you too. I waved a sparkler enthusiastically. You be my girlfriend. You're truly wonderful, and I want to protect you from now on. I've contacted a hospital about your mother's illness. We'll go to Beijing after the New Year. I've booked the tickets. Bring your father along too. I cover my mouth, trying not to cry out loud. He understood everything. When 2 people build a life together, they rely on each other at their lowest points. I've never hidden my background, but not many people have accepted it as openly as he has. It's okay if you say no. We can just be friends. I accept. Amidst the first crackling firecrackers of the new year, I heard his cheers. After the new year, I took my parents to Beijing. After seeing a renowned specialist, he repeatedly praised their survival as a medical miracle. The blood clot from the injury to Mom's head had been pressing on a nerve. If it had spread and blocked a blood vessel, it would have been life-threatening. The doctor prescribed medication and told us to monitor her condition. Dad wanted to renovate our house. After I beat up Mrs. Liu's son, they held a grudge against us. When the Liu family rebuilt their house during my senior year of high school, they encroached on half an acre of our land behind our house. Dad argued with them and was beaten up by old man Liu. I only learned about this later. I took out my savings from all these years, a full 150,000 yuan. Dad, let's build. Let's build a 2-story house. Mrs. Liu complained to the village officials that our house blocked her sunlight. I was scared and hungry, hesitant to accept it. After my first year working at Xiansong, I funded the repair of the muddy dirt road in our village. The village officials now treat my dad with respect. Exploiting influence is wrong, but sometimes it feels really good. We demolished the old mud house and contracted out the entire construction project. I watched as my youth, bit by bit, was torn down. Pain, humiliation, hurt, and hardship were all buried. But the love remained. A brand new 2-story building quickly rose. Dad goes to the orchard every day, checking for insects, spraying pesticides, and bagging the fruit. Everyone advises him to stop working, but he's just not one to stay idle. Mom is the kindest old lady in the village. When the neighboring aunties and grandmas gossip, she never joins in because she doesn't understand what they're talking about. Only a group of children gather around her to share the candy from her pockets. Xiao Lei took over a repair shop and started his own business. He's completely focused on his career and has no intention of finding a partner. The day I officially brought Zhang Shuo home, he secretly bought Dad an electric tricycle. Dad was completely won over. My parents started to become nagging, often spending an hour complaining to me on the phone. I used to wish time would slow down so I could grow up and repay their kindness. Now I'm even greedier. I wish time would slow down so I can be with them until they live to be 100. My beloved ones, please all stay well.